Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Austin Dillard, and I am the Director of External Relations and Sponsorship for the CSRI Conference. On behalf of my colleagues in the conference committee, we're looking forward to what the next few days have to offer for you all. Throughout the year between the conferences, the CSRI board members work diligently to disseminate research and academics to academics, college sport practitioners, and the general public. And to this conference, they provide a forum through which speakers and attendees can discuss relevant issues within the college sport. So when the conference committee was planning for this year's discussion panels, we thought to ourselves, who better to provide an avenue for discussion than those who have helped offer such avenues each year for the last 8 years. We are honored to have these great professionals here today to offer their insight on the current state of college sport and what they expect to see moving forward. To help us guide our discussion day is none other than one of the University of South Carolina's own, Dr. Mark Nagel. He is a professor in the Department of Sport and Entertainment Management and is the Associate Director for the CSRI Conference. Dr. Nagel, the floor is yours.
Good to be here. We are missing one panelist today so far. We're not quite sure where Dr. Hawkins is. Hopefully somewhere between Athens, Georgia, and Columbia, South Carolina at the moment. So we'll let his seat open. He'll hopefully be here. That was the initial plan. But what I thought I would do today is get a discussion going with all of these wonderful people who have helped CSRI in so many different ways. I don't think it's going to be difficult for us to get questions going. But I'll ask a few questions of each of the panelists to get things started. Definitely want to leave some time for anyone in the audience to also participate. Just to introduce the people here, this is Dr. Ellen Starowski, who is at Drexel. And I'm going to keep, even though all of these people's bios could be pages and pages long, I'm going to kind of keep it brief so we get more questions. We have Mr. Jamal Brooks, who is also here. Alan Sack, who is now this is your first semester, your first year of retirement, correct?
Yes.
So newly retired.
Professor Emeritus.
Professor Emeritus.
It means I'm teaching.
You still have an office on campus though, right?
No, they kicked me.
Oh, they kicked you out. Oh,
They took my telephone.
It's more important.
And then we have Dr. John Gurdy. And what I figured I would do, since Dr. Gurdy, you're kind of on the end, and you've had some experience as an administrator, particularly at the conference level. I was wondering if you could talk a little about your perceptions of how things have changed from the conference perspective in regards to how big-time college sport operates, problems, issues, concerns. What maybe has changed, if anything, over the last 10 years in the history of CSRI from the SEC, ACC perspective?
First of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Bigger, more everything, more money, more visibility, more exploitation, I mean, all of it. And it continues to grow rapidly in all aspects. But I'm a little bit more interested, not necessarily where we've been, but where we're going. In terms of what's the future hold for college athletics, what are the biggest issues on the horizon. And I think the biggest issue, arguably, in all of sports that's emerged over the past 10 years that's driving everything is the recent or the revelations about brain trauma. Football drives everything. Any way you slice it. We talk about college athletics, football drives everything. Okay, it's all about football. And I do think one of the things that universities are going to, schools at all sizes are going to have to consider is it's long been said that athletics is the front porch of the university, okay, and in particular football. And we really have to consider whether or not in today's world, this is the environment in which we live in higher education. Increasing standards and expectations regarding providing students an education worthy of the 21st century. Okay? Increased government oversight, strained resources, increasing losing public trust. In other words, it's higher education, our colleges and universities doing what they're supposed to be doing. Increased student debt, And all of this is going on when you're talking about athletic programs that are the vast majority of running dead. And the increased risk. College presidents and trustee members are always talking about managing risk, okay? And the amount of risk associated with major college athletics, and in particular football, has risen dramatically and continues to rise. Legal liability, reliability regarding the health of students. And so we really start to have to ask the question of whether or not that front porch needs remodeling. And beyond that, it's now a moral issue. Now that we're really finding out about the physical risk that football players in particular are subject to. It's clear, it has been clear, that we have not been, it's not been a square deal for them. We're not meeting their needs academically. We continue to try to slam a square peg into a round hole. These kids are not traditional students. So they're getting shortchanged educationally. But now now we're starting to find out the physical costs of it. It's now become a moral issue. Every educational institution in our country, including high schools and junior highs, are going to have a discussion. And that discussion is the role of the educational institution to build brains, strengthen brains, or is it to scramble them? And we're going to really continue. I think that's the biggest issue facing not only college athletics, but athletics at all levels. I think at the high school level, you're going to see gradually that football is going to tackle football is going to wither on the vine. But yet you still have the football industrial complex trying to make a sale and trying to convince the public that we can make this game reasonably safe. Not going to happen. All the data tells us otherwise. So I really think it's a moral dilemma now. How can educational institutions continue to sponsor, underwrite, celebrate, use as a major branding tool an activity that we know is increasingly placing young people's brains at risk? It's a blood sport. And we have to be out in front of this. And keep in mind, the turn of the century, the early 1900s, the three most popular sports in America were horse racing, baseball, and boxing. In fact, the NCAA used to sponsor boxing until 1961, or maybe 51 or 61. And this is a lot like, I equate it to the cigarette industry. Cigarettes were, and the people who made them, the companies who produced them, it was glamorous, it was exciting, it was a great business model, until it wasn't. And I firmly believe that that's where we're headed in terms of all the revelations about brain trauma. And therefore, I think the biggest issue is going to be on college's place is, should we continue to sponsor this activity that so clearly damages, or places young people's health at risk? I think that's the biggest issue on the horizon.
Mr. Brooks, you obviously played big-time college football. You played in the NFL. Right now you work as a financial planner and helps athletes. Do you see football players asking questions more now than they were 5 years ago about trauma and injuries, and then also how their college experience may or may not have contributed to that?
I would like to say yes to some degree. When I was playing football, even though it was never told, you kind of knew something was wrong. But you didn't know how bad it could be. So that's the question. People say, if you run into somebody, something's going to happen, but you just don't know what that consequence is going to be. What I'm finding most of the guys that I deal with, and even myself, once you transition from college to the pros, you actually find out your value. When you're in college, you don't know how valuable you are because it's about the team. I'm part of a team. I'm part of a team. But when you become professional, you're part of a team, but you're pretty much an individual because you're trying to play well to go to the next team, or you're trying to play well. You know they just drafted a first-round quarterback. Yeah, I'm playing for this team, but I know 2 years from now, hopefully I'll finish the season out, I'm not going to be the starting quarterback 2 years from now because they just drafted this guy from Ohio State. So there's a lot of contradictions regarding team and being an individual. But as you get older and as you get to the NFL, you start to realize I'm very valuable. From something as simple as a Twitter account, an Instagram account. You don't realize how valuable you are with 1 million followers. You can tweet one thing at 10:05 and it will hit SportsCenter immediately. That's very valuable. I'm talking about not just professional athletes, college kids have this power. They can tweet something. The starting quarterback from Ohio State can tweet something a day before the national championship game, and they're talking about it all in SportsCenter the next day. Now, with you understanding value, when you get to a point when you're older and you start to talk about numbers, what does that value mean? How much money does that make, or how much money can I make? Because money in some aspects equal power. How much power do I actually have? And you look back on your college days, you're like, wow, I had 1 million followers when I was in college. Why couldn't I get paid off of the sponsorships that Google provides with click ads or Instagram provides? I can't get any of that. So then you look back and you say, okay, is the system rigged? Is the system actually there to help me? Somebody's getting paid off of this, because I know I have value. I understand I got a scholarship. I understand I go to school for free. It's not the same education. Keep in mind, you guys get to go see presentations by the president. I have to be at practice. You get this. I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general. Education for an athlete is totally different than an education for I don't want to say use the word normal, but for a typical student, I didn't get the same education. But you start to learn those things, you start to look back and you have some sort of resentment on the whole idea of, okay, was it a fair trade-off? One, I played 4 years, my head hurts, my knees hurt, but I'm an athlete, and I didn't get the same education. And I probably can't even go back to the school and work out in the gym right now if I wanted to. So it's a lot of things, and you start to build a hard wall, a wall against the resentment of the college. That's why a lot of athletes, people don't know this. There's some, and they advertise it a lot, but I would say, and this is not a figure that I can back up, but I would say from what I know, and I talked to teammates over the years, I would say only 10% of athletes actually get back to their school. I don't know that many athletes that get back to their school. Matter of fact, I know a lot of athletes that don't even want their name associated with the school. And we're talking about the kid that was on the front cover of every magazine across the country with that uniform on. It's like, when you say my name, say Joseph Smith from Chattahoochee High School in in whatever. So that's what I see mainly in regards to understanding their value.
Dr. Sack, you played in the first of many game of the centuries. I don't know how many times that term came up, but you played in the Michigan State Notre Dame game. And I know you've talked about, and you've written a lot about how you played sports, but they had to keep you because you were a 4-year scholarship and you were at Notre Dame, and that you felt that was a really valuable experience. Do you think that, given what Mr. Brooks just said, do you think that current athletes in college are given those same opportunities to get an education?
Not even close. It's unrecognizable to me what has happened today. Just an example. I get back to Notre Dame in the summer on August 15th. We would start pre-season practice on August 15th. We would play our first game, early August in September, and we played in this 1966 team. We played on through till Thanksgiving, and we won the national championship without going to a bowl game. So after that last game in November, we were out of there. I went home, I saw my family. We had a nice Christmas together, New Year's together. Didn't have to come back until, then we did some pre-spring practice, pretty much on our own in many ways, but spring practice, if I recall, was maybe 3 weeks. After that, I did not see a coach. There were no coaches on me trying to direct me or to control my life until I came back the next fall on August 15th. Now, I had a job in the summer. I had a summer job, and I had really, I'm not saying it was easy, I can't tell you how many times I took a hit in the head and never even thought a thing of it. And if it did, my coaches would say, hey, it's only pain. That's one of the things they always say, it's only pain. Or they would say, hey, you come out and you're kind of dizzy. Anybody can play when they're healthy. That was their attitude. I mean, it was like World War II preparation for boot camp or something. So I'm not saying it was real easy, but time demand wise, it allowed me to be a student and to go on to get a PhD at Penn State. There's just, the differences are absolutely incredible what's happened now. If you haven't had the opportunity, the Northwestern, in the Northwestern case, the Union case, the brief written by the NLRB guy in Northwestern in Illinois, I started reading it at 10 o'clock at night. I couldn't put it down. I could not believe what they do now. I could not believe that they practice all summer long, that they start off on August 1st, is the beginning of preseason practice, and then they go through the season, and then after the season is over, and usually after a bowl game, then they have 2 weeks maybe, or a little bit of time to go back and see their families before they start practice in the summer. Then there's pre-summer practice for the preseason practice for starting. It's year round. It's absolutely incredible. So for me, it's hard to really imagine, and the time demands are absolutely incredible. So yeah, I think about it all the time, what the differences are, and much easier to get much more of an opportunity to develop as a total human being back in 1966 than today.
Dr. Starowski, there's been discussions about all the time that goes into athletics, college athletics. And we've seen the Northwestern case and the Bannon case, and there seems to be a trend, at least through the courts, that we might see pay for play, which we do have right now, because college athletes do get paid, they just get capped in their compensation. But there seems to be a move towards a real pay for play. The Kessler case might actually uncap everything. How does that, if those things continue to go in that direction, how does that fit with college, Title IX, some of these other things that we've kind of attached legally or structurally to the current collegiate model? How might some of those changes occur, and what might that look like?
I get to do this in 5 minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Sounds reasonable to me.
An entire semester's worth of law and management in 5 minutes.
And 120 years of history. Okay. Actually, I love your question, because I've been thinking about this a great deal. And this is supposed to be a research-focused discussion, by the way, so I've been coming at this from my inner researcher is coming out. And I'm really interested in how we frame college sport discussions and how we think about them, how we approach them as commentators and advocates and researchers. And I think the way that you frame the understanding about college sport, that then delivers a certain kind of outcome. If we look at college sport as being the production of powerful forces that are exerting control over every bit of the enterprise, then I think that then leads us to a certain way that we can approach this discussion about what's happening in and around the players. Because college sport history can really be read as a history of labor. We historically have not liked to think of it that way, but when you look at all of the dynamics that go on around the enterprise and around the athletes especially, we have all of the indicators of labor. We talk about time demands, we talk about what's happening in the workplace, we talk about health care, medical care, the terms and conditions under which they participate. And my suggestion in terms of approaching all of these questions is that we really get clearer about the frameworks that we're actually talking about, because I think that that will help us forge a path towards understanding what's going to happen in the 21st century. So that's number one. Number two, I think we also have to get clear about the way that we think about the economic system. And Andy, I'm looking at you. I mean, you know far more about economics than I do, but I'm very, very interested in the discussions that we have about the quote-unquote non-profitability of athletic departments. There was a study which was released this week from USA Today about the revenues and expenses of Division I athletic programs. And one of the punchlines or the conclusions was that the vast majority of programs are not evidencing that they're profit making. And when I hear that, I think, well, what else would we expect from a nonprofit? It's confusing to me. It's kind of like, well, why are we saying that there's something wrong in that profile if they are in fact nonprofits? I would expect to see a profit-making entity if they were in fact labeled profit-making entities, right? Some of you are laughing. I know you're laughing with me and not at me, right? So I think it would be helpful as we talk about these things to kind of really think about our definitions and the way that we conceive of them, and ultimately what that's actually saying. Because we don't know if they're really profit-making or not, because we can't get under the hood and really see exactly where the financials are going and what they all mean. So there are lots and lots of questions that we have around that. So those are two big things. And then we get to the actual question about what's happening with the players. The one thing I'm reasonably sure of, and I could be wrong, but I'm reasonably sure about this, that the concerns about the destruction of the system, if players were afforded more value, more of their value, there doesn't seem to be anything in the system that would really suggest that it's going to blow up the system. We have had 100 years of navigating these waters and adjusting at every turn. And if you think for a second, those of you who are familiar with the concerns around cost of attendance, for example, we had the debunking of the full scholarship, that it wasn't actually a full scholarship. There was a gap between what it actually covered and what cost of attendance was. And the concern was that if you went to cost of attendance, then there would be massive cutting of sports, and the system simply would break because it could not accommodate that expense. Within months of a ruling in O'Bannon, we had schools who were claiming that they could not release those funds, who somehow figured out a way to do that. And if we look at that within the context of labor history, this is classic owner versus employee behavior. This is what owners do. They say that they don't have enough money, that they can't possibly afford it. And then when somehow there seems to be a little bit of leverage on the part of players, they're then able to actually access those funds. So those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about. And then number 4, I'm eventually going to work my way around to the real essence of your question, which is, some of you are thinking I'm very inattentive and I didn't even understand the question, which I did. But in this system, these things are of a piece. When we talk about equity, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about equity for football players or whether we're talking about equity for women's basketball players. This is of a stream. It is not, they're not oppositional in my mind. The same system that exploits football players feels very comfortable discriminating against women and against racial minorities. And that's the tendency of the system. This is how it exploits everyone. Isn't that a happy thought? Well, the reason why I think it's helpful for me to think of it this way, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, the reason why I think it's helpful is that if you're trying to unlock the system, you're actually unlocking it for everyone. Okay? That if abandon prevails, if athletes are afforded NIL rights, if athletes are able to get endorsement money, if they are recognized as employees and paid, that should actually elevate the prospects for both women and men. So that if we're Missy Franklin, we don't have to be devalued so that we can compete at the college level. We could harvest that profit at the time when it's available to us. So I see these things as being interlinked rather than being oppositional and separated. So that was an awful long explanation, as usual.
As usual, yeah. Well, that's what we appreciate the depth of your understanding and sharing it. And I would add something that some of you saw Real Sports last night did 15 minutes on spending in college athletics, and it was fascinating. I think most of the tone of that piece was we're spending too much money, and most of this is the coach's fault. The coaches are making all this money, and unfortunately, I think what happened in that piece is what happens a lot of times, which is we fail to look at what is the structural issue of why, how are the finances flowing, and why are they flowing. Yeah, go ahead. We'll go ahead to Dr. Gurdy. Oh.
I think what one of the major challenges, and it's going to be driven by the court cases and the healthcare stuff, is we need to renegotiate the deal. That's what's starting to happen right now. You have the deal between the athlete and the institution. And the deal is this: I go and I provide my athletic performance, so you can generate profit, get on TV, and in exchange for that, I get a legitimate chance to earn a meaningful, well-balanced educational, personal, and athletic experience. Now, there was a time when that was a pretty square deal. I think Al will probably tell you that he got a pretty square deal when he was at Notre Dame. He got a real educational experience. I played basketball at Davidson College, and I graduated in '79. I was happy with my deal. I got a good deal because it was clear that this was about education first. Okay? But the problem is the game has changed so much. The type of kids that are running through the programs now have changed so much. The visibility has changed so much. The dollars so much. But the problem is we continue to try to operate an athletic system of the 21st century based on a mindset of the 20th century, mid-20th century, okay? So we got to change the deal. We got to renegotiate the deal. Some of that's starting to happen. We've not only got to, because the athletic experience in the 21st century of major college athletics is so vastly different. It's like being on another planet than it was 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Okay? So we've got to redo the deal to make it square. And that doesn't mean just paying them more money. That's not enough. Okay? We tried to raise the limit, we're now going to get $5 grand. Okay? But we got to do some stuff while they're on campus to give more money in their pocket, right? But what I'm afraid is once we do that, everybody's going to say, oh, now they're getting some dough. It's a square deal. No. Colleges and universities have two fundamental responsibilities to all students, including athletes. Okay? The first is to provide an educational experience that is relevant and worthwhile in the 21st century. And number two, to provide them safety, a safe environment, healthy, safe environment. So those are the two areas where we've got to rethink on the academic side, okay? For sure, they need some more dough out there on campus and being able to travel to championship games and give them a little extra spending money and all that kind of stuff. But that's still shortchanging. We've got to do something about the academic experience. One thing is, we've got to get over this full-time student thing. They are so non-traditional students. They shouldn't have to be enrolled in full-time students during the season. Okay. There needs to be some sort of deal where maybe it's for every year that you play, you get a year to come back when your playing days are over, so you can be a real student. There's got to be some sort of post-eligibility educational commitment, because you know what? They're not getting it right now. Look at all the graduation rates. Look at North Carolina, the bogus classes, all that. They're not getting a real educational experience. So we've got to do something that when the playing days are over, they can come back and get that real educational experience. They ought to be able to, you know, get money off of their name, brand. Okay, not only that, but we should embrace that and say, let's build a curriculum around that. They can have a real life case study. Kids will be more interested in a real life case study about their brand than they will go to some Shakespeare class. Okay, again, that's 20th century mindset trying to apply to a 21st century athlete. Okay, and the other area that's going to have to be renegotiated is there's got to be some sort of post-separation from the university healthcare commitment. These kids are putting their brains on the line, okay, and their bodies on the line. And so there has to be some sort of post-eligibility healthcare commitment. In other words, we've got to renegotiate the deal that's more reflective of the realities of the 21st century athlete and the 21st century college experience. The one issue about that, though, is all that stuff is going to cost money, lots of money. So the colleges are going to have to be placed in the position again is, do we want to keep up with the Joneses? I know the top big 5 conferences or whatever, the 65 schools, they're going to find that money, okay? But how about all the other schools? Okay, when you're already running debt, and people are already asking questions about, wait a second, we're underwriting $20 million in the athletic program, and student fees are going up again, and my student debt is going up again, okay? So those are the type of things that we're going to have to consider in terms of renegotiating the deal with the athletes so that, you know what, it's fair, it's okay, it's a square deal. But it's more than just paying. It's got to be more than comprehensive.
Dr. Strauski, real quick, and then we'll go back to Dr. Sack. Sorry.
I would agree with a good part of what you said. The one thing that I would take issue with, we're actually redirected a different way, would be that what I think ails the system is that there is not an appropriate and independent counterweight to the industry itself. For example, if we think about the NFL has a counterweight to it, which is the NFLPA. It is a representative body that works solely on behalf of the players. And that's what I think needs to happen. That I think there needs to be an independent entity that represents the athletes who are not members of the NCAA, that will educate them about what the practices are that are being imposed on them and what the repercussions of those practices are, and that it creates an avenue for agency for them to affect change on their own behalf. I think one of the framings of college athletes as quote-unquote kids is a very destructive framework. These are young people of military age who can go off and fight in Afghanistan, but somehow when they play basketball, in the one shining moment, they're apparently 13 years old. It's peculiar to me. And I think that it's a strategic device to suggest that adults are the ones who negotiate for them. So for me, because access to that framework affects the power structure. So that, I agree with you in terms of the need to renegotiate the deal, and frankly, I don't think this is about pay. I think this is about access to athletes knowing what their rights are, to access to knowing how the system moves them in very particular ways to the profit of the corporate entities that are invested in it. And so I would make that adjustment, but I don't disagree with the idea that it needs to be renegotiated.
Al, thanks for being patient.
The first thing I want to say is 2 years ago, I was on a panel just like this one. We were all together. And I had suggested, and my organization had suggested that we wanted to do away with the National Collegiate Athletic Association altogether and replace it with a federally chartered corporation. And I just want to tell you, that didn't work. We tried. However, I think it's important that you do try and that you do push. And I don't know who said it, but they said the NCAA only changes if at the point of a sword. And in the last 5 years, I've seen that sword at work, and I've seen the NCAA having to bend. What was the sword made up of? The antitrust movement was incredible. I think that was really something that struck fear and terror into the NCAA, okay? I think that the threat of government intervention at some level was striking a fear into the NCAA. The hearings that were being heard over and over and over again. The activism of the athletes themselves. You know, it's Emmett Gill and his whole group, and going out there and taking a stand on moral issues at various universities. I haven't seen that since the 1960s. And again, I think that's another spear that was being thrown right at the NCAA. The union movement at Northwestern, I support that 100%. The courage to stand up and try to get a union through so that they could negotiate. It didn't necessarily work out yet. We don't know what the end result's going to be, but it hasn't worked yet. But those threats and those spears coming from all kinds of different angles, I would argue, did bring about some changes. And the changes, I think, are important ones. For instance, I think I've been trying to get with scholarships.
Multi-years?
You know, the idea of the idea that, like, the scholarship I had at the University of Notre Dame was you couldn't take that scholarship away, all right? You couldn't take it away for injury and for other things. So one of the first things we come up with is the antitrust, let's see, we're talking about, what was the case? The first case was the case at Rice University.
Agnew.
The Agnew case at Rice University, where they are talking about, you know, the idea of actually having a multi-year scholarship that extends to graduation. That's very, very important. That would not have come about, I don't think, unless there was an antitrust lawsuit that was brought forth in the Agnew case. And I think that was a tremendous step forward. However, it didn't go far enough. That's not required of everyone. It's optional. And it should be required of everyone that you have multi-year scholarships that extend to graduation. Other changes that have taken place. With Mary Willingham and the people at UNC and other faculty who stood up there because of the cheating and the corruption that was going on there. That led to a situation where the University of North Carolina was almost going to lose its accreditation by the state. That sent, I think, chills through schools throughout the United States. And I think they're much more aware of the problems of athletic corruption than they were before that. And it was because of some people who had the guts to stand up and really talk about this thing. Well, I think this is a tremendous step forward because of the antitrust people with Hausfeld and that whole group. The idea of having the full cost of attendance being paid for. I think that's a tremendous step forward now. You couldn't have imagined that 5, 6 years ago, but now that is in fact in place in the Division I schools. The problem is that it's only in the BCS, the big, it's required, and they required in the Power 5 conferences, and many of the other conferences can't really afford it. But that's a step forward as well. The time demand things has never been brought up before, but now you see students themselves who, at the last convention at the NCAA, are saying the time demands are ridiculous. We want them changed. We want them reversed. We want to reduce that. And I believe that that's going to happen. I believe the NCAA is under pressure, and they're going to have to do something about the time demands. If you combine the idea of multi-year scholarships that cannot be taken away for performance or for other kinds of reasons such as that, combine that with the idea of the time demands being cut back, I think you're moving more back toward the kind of situation I have on us at Notre Dame. I think it makes it possible to be a real student at a university. Anything else? Right now we're working on, in the Drake Group, what we're working on right now is we've had an opportunity to meet with Arne Duncan. We've talked to the Department of Education, and we were able to get some legislation put forward. It is, for those of you who are interested, it's HR 2731, the National Collegiate Athletic Accountability Act. And it is sponsored by Congressman Dent in Pennsylvania. All this would really do is require that we have a presidential commission developed to go through all the complexities of the things that you're talking about, Alan, that all of us are talking about right now, and we would get real disclosure, we would get a real chance to see transparency, and I think we'd be much. Right now, when I come to a meeting like this and hear people giving their papers, oftentimes you just don't have access to the data you need to really do the papers that you want to do and do the research you want to do. I think that the federal government can get that kind of information, and if we really expose what's going on out there, I think change is really inevitable. So I'm a little more positive, maybe a little more optimistic, that in fact, if we keep on pushing as hard as possible in all these different directions with those spears coming at the NCAA from all kinds of different directions, that we can in fact create a viable form of collegiate athletics in which athletes have the opportunity to get a really good education. I really believe that.
Mr. Brooks, you've been very patient as all these academics provide long-winded, extremely detailed answers. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, there are two things that I definitely see, for me not being an academician, that I think could be easy solutions, not solutions, but can help solve some of the problems. One would be diversity. And people say, when you say diversity, typically you hear gender or race. I think the people that are making decisions and the people that are analyzing the people that are making decisions, there needs to be more of the people that you're talking about. There needs to be more athletes that have PhDs, because you come from a sense with a certain sense of empathy on the topic. Give an example, or just a thought. I don't want to put the two, but I have to because that's what's in my head. Could the civil rights movement have been as successful if it wasn't from someone from that environment? There needs to be more. If we're going to talk about athletes in sports, or athletes in college, and athletes can you imagine if we had an athlete as a commissioner? I'm talking about an athlete that fits the stereotype that we're talking about, the big name athlete. Let's say Tim Tebow is the commissioner of the SEC, and let's say Tim Brown is the NCAA commissioner of all of college football. I'm pretty sure when we then sit at the table and talk with them about some issues, they understand it a little bit more than just qualitative information and just talking about it in that format. Another thing that I see that is always going to contradict or is always going to be a clash is, I agree with you. The NCAA resembles a model, but I don't think it's a labor model. I think it's an indentured servant model. And this is why. The labor model is, I'm the business owner, and you're going to take what I take, and if you don't, then I'm going to fire you, you go work somewhere else. But in sports, you don't have that option. If I don't play for you or play under this model, I don't play. And the carrot that's in front of me is, if I get through these 4 years, the carrot that an indentured servant has is I get freedom, which is the same as I go professional, I get freedom away from this. I can finally make money in my name, make money in my likeness, make money in so many different ways. Most athletes, when they leave college, the big ones, like the first, second, third rounders, they knew they were going to be a top. Ben Simmons from LSU, he's been considered a top number 1, 2, 3 pick probably since he was in 10th grade. So he knew he was going to make money. All he's doing is buying time to get free from the restrictions that he has, so he then can make money on his name, then can make money on his Instagram, then can make money on so many different things. So until people become honest, I'm not saying honest, until people can understand that it's deeper than just labor, you're controlling my time, you're controlling my human capital, you're controlling if I even go home for Christmas, you're controlling everything about my existence. Let alone you're taking the number I wear, number 55, you're turning around and selling their jerseys, and I don't even get any money from that. Just as long as you work and be quiet, once your 4 years are up, your indentured servant contract will be totaled out, and you be free. That's what it kind of feels like. It doesn't feel like, okay, well, if I don't work for you, let me get. Matter of fact, in the labor market, if the job moves, I can go work somewhere else. In college, my coach leaves, I'm stuck. It's not the same. It's similar, but it's really deeper than that. It's to the point where control over everything about me. Control over everything about me. I went to a small school. We played some big teams. We were very good. But even a person at the Division I, Division II, Division III, that carrot and that control is, you telling me a kid at a Division III school, he's 5'9", 260-pound guard, has to be controlled the same as the offensive lineman at Alabama that might go pro? Let that kid go do some things. He's 5'9", 260 pounds. He's not going pro. So let him go have a class that's engineering, because the likelihood, I'm pretty sure 99.98%, he won't go pro. He might not even be in football in any aspect. So why is it the fact that it doesn't just funnel from the, we're talking about the 5 major conferences, we're talking about the culture of sports. Just back to the example, 5'9", 260, there's nothing he's going to do. But they control him the same, meaning 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours a week of doing something that is not going to benefit him after college at all. At least with the person that's 6'6", 320 and can run 4.2, I can understand to some degree, because after school, this is to get you better because you're going to the pros. Ben Simmons, okay, you might need to be on the basketball court for 40 hours a week. But not the short, stubby, thick guy. Not him. So that's.
But you know, it's even more insidious than that, though. Okay, when you say take it to another level, look at it this way. So you also got, and race is at the core of this as well. Okay, let's be honest about that. No one ever wants to talk about that. But the bottom line is, you have, and the college athletic community say, well, the system works for 97% of the kids out there. The old ad about, it's the vast majority of the kids don't major, or I forget what.
400,000 going pro and something else.
Yeah, going pro and something else. But you know how the system works. I mean, Taylor Branch, with his article in the Atlantic, talked about the width of the plantation. Okay, bottom line is, you got 3%, 4% of the kids in football and men's basketball, that vast majority are black kids, generating all this money, okay? And all of that money, large part of that money is being used to subsidize and pay for all the other sports, not overwhelmingly white, a lot of them country club sports. So you have this minority of students, a large percentage of them black, not getting a square deal educationally, right? Not putting their lifelong health on the line, okay? But generating all this money, everybody's getting rich off of it, except them. They're not getting a square deal. So it's even more insidious than that when you talk about how the money being generated, the kids are not getting paid, and putting all these demands on, it's paying for all the other sports. All of them white, pretty much. And a lot of them country club sports where the parents could probably pay for half the tuition anyway. So it's really insidious, I think, in that regard.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Can I ask Jamal a question first?
Sure, go ahead, yeah.
Jamal, Sonny Vaccaro said about me that I was wrong by saying that, he said that the athletes do not want the educational benefits that I was suggesting that they should have. They want cash. Would you agree with that? He said,
Well, I
our
can't-
organization is trying very, very hard to bring educational kinds of benefits to, that are not there for athletes today, black athletes and otherwise. He says, you're wasting your time, Alan. They don't want those kinds of educational opportunities. What they really want is cash.
Okay, I can't speak for him. But two, I would say the education that's presented today, I can understand where he's coming from. If you tell me I played a game on Saturday, got a concussion, and I have a midterm exam on Monday, but if you're telling me I'm going to get a real education, meaning when football starts, now I just go to school for the next 6 months out of the year, and I get to be part of the math club, and get to go to school abroad, and I get to do all those things that other kids get to do, then yeah, who wouldn't want that? But if you're telling me the education that I'm getting is just going to be taking up time from football, then I can also understand the student that says, no, I don't want that education. So it's how you frame what kind of education are you talking about.
That's perfect. Thank you.
If you want to add something, okay. Well, over here first.
For the first thing, do you think the doomsday scenario for football might be offset with advances in technology and rules and coaching methods?
No. Not with all due respect, that is a crock of baloney being propagated by the football industrial complex, okay? It is a violent collision blood sport, okay? The basic ethos of the game is to take out and hurt your opponent, essentially. If the danger meter is at 9 on a scale of 10 right now, and you do all this better equipment, no data to suggest that, heads-up tackling, they've been talking about, do your research, they've been talking about heads-up tackling as a way to make the game safe since the late 1800s, okay? That's a crime, okay? The only way you're really going to make it safe, this is how I think it's going to, you're always going to have an NFL. You're always going to have a pro league, okay? And I have no problem with that. Everyone's an adult. Everyone knows everything's on the table. Everyone knows the risk. If you want to enter into that agreement as a pro, fine. If you want to watch it, fine. The issue regarding football, this blood sport, this collision sport, this sport that all the trend lines we haven't scratched the surface as to how damaging it is. The trend lines are going to continue to go up.
We've been given the hook actually by the
Okay.
law, so take 10
It's
seconds.
going to,
to
at
wrap
the youth
up.
leagues is where that's going to change. In our schools.
We can continue this discussion at the ale house this evening. Other libations, but thank you very much. Sorry we didn't get to
Thank you, Dr. Nagel, and the panelists for your insight and knowledge. We'll continue the academic presentations currently in the next few minutes. Just a reminder that Water Keynote speaker this evening at 4:30. The folks on after, and we'll see you at 6:30 as well.